gone past 2 o'clock already. We are going to start the meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for purposes of looking into the annual report and the Auditor General report, as well as the Audit Committee report of the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport, together with its entities. The meeting is going to be run in two parts. The first part is going to be a closed session or an in-committee meeting of the committee together with the Audit Committee as well as the Auditor General, for purposes of the committee to be briefed by the two committees, which is the Auditor General as well as the Audit Committee. And thereafter, we will proceed to the open session where we will be joined by the department and those members of public who want to either join physically or want to join online for purposes of having the annual report presented and allow members to interact with their report. Now, for record purposes, I'm just going to ask the members that are present to please introduce themselves. After, we will ask the Auditor General Audit Committee to also introduce themselves. Honorable Member.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Derek America. I'm a member of SCAPA.
Good afternoon, Chair, and everyone. My name is Melika Akago, member of SCAPA.
Then thank you very much, honorable members. We are also assisted by the procedural officer, Mr. Dustin Davis, as well as Lizette Klute, who's sitting over there. And also we are having Mary Vegas on the recording, as well as the IT support Tafsir. Just going to hand over to the AG as well as the Audit Committee to introduce themselves, and thereafter the AG can start.
Chairperson.
Oh, my apologies. Before you start, AG, there are also members that are joining us online that have requested to join us online. Please go ahead, honorable member.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm Gillian Bosman, an alternate member of the committee, standing in for Honorable Maseko today.
Thank you very much, honorable. Member Barnes might also join us. He's just experiencing some network problem. Also, an indication was also given by Honorable Nkonjo that if she managed to have time, she will join us online. Otherwise, accept her apology if she's unable to make it. AG?
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members of the committee. My name is Ashley Olkers, and I'm a Deputy Business Executive in the Auditor General's Office in the Western Cape. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. Ignatius Fourie, a Senior Manager responsible for the audit of cultural affairs and sport, as well as the three entities.
Afternoon, Chair. My name is Peter Strauss. I am the Chair of the Audit Committee.
Now, just we start with the department on for all the entities.
Yes,
Okay.
Chair.
So that's even better. Yeah. Otherwise, you all other or three different audit committees. Let's go to the Auditor General. Let's start with the report. Standing Committee on Public Account of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, where we were being briefed by the Auditor General as well as the Audit Committee of the department and its entity regarding the outcomes of the audit report. That was a closed session. The second session is an open session where we are going to be briefed by the department and its entity, all its 3 entities, regarding its annual report. The meeting is a open session. It's an open meeting. In other words, it's also open to members of the public who either joined us physically or digitally or virtually. Because at the end of the session, we are going to allow members of the public who might have questions to also ask questions as well. We are doing this because the meeting was advertised as such. It was advertised in all the 3 official languages of the province, where we also indicated to people that those who want to ask questions can also ask questions. Now, let me make use of the opportunity to welcome the department led by the Minister and the HOD. Welcome, Minister. Thank you very much, especially for indulging us before time, because we know the meeting was supposed, we should have called you after 3 o'clock, but we are happy that you could comply and come in earlier way, because we finished quite early, Auditor General and the Audit Committee. If there are any opening remarks, Honorable Minister, that you'd like to make, we'll allow you to do so, and maybe the HOD will also like to say something, and thereafter we will go straight to the reports. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. Nothing from my side this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few notes just to highlight that we were able to spend 98.8% of our budget this year. The year under review. It was not one of the easier years because of the COVID-19, but we did exceedingly well. Just also to say that the under expenditure was due mainly to COE savings, and which resulted from delayed filling of posts and also resignations that we had. And in addition, the department also experienced challenges with the delivery of IT equipment and library books due to the impact of COVID-19 and the appointment of a service provider to do some work within the library services new delivery model. But otherwise, we are here, Chairperson, to provide any clarity on the rest of the financial statements. Thank you.
Okay. Now, what we are going to do, we're dealing with the annual report of the department and its 3 entities. Now, the parts or the section we are dealing with, it's C and E, because A, B, and D were dealt with this morning by the Standing Committee. So, because it's 4, in other words, it's 4 reports, we're dealing with them concurrently or simultaneously. We're going to start with C. Now, allow members who've got questions on C, section C of the department, of the heritage, and also of the cultural commission, as well as the language committee as well. So I'll get an indication from members who would like to ask questions on sections C of the report. Honorable Xhego.
Thanks. Mine would be to the department directing and leave the entities for other members to raise. I'm on page 145 of the department. Yes.
100?
Page 145. That, in terms of the key emerging risks for the following financial year, it has been identified there that as one of the key risks and the emerging one, that the department is unable to provide sufficient and appropriate support for the targeted youth in the respect of youth development in the Western Cape province. The impact of this risk could lead to, among others, increased youth disillusionment, alienation, and lack of sense of belonging. Now, what I want to understand is that a department that whose most predominantly constituency of it is supposed to be youth, and you have identified this as a risk. So what are you doing to mitigate that? And then lastly, Chair, on the same part, which is part C, page 154. I've got two questions there. With regards to developing a criteria for entering into partnership with the private sector, the department knows that it doesn't participate in partnership with any private sector. Now, what I want to understand now, an under-financed department with a very broad mandate to reach out to a lot of people, in particular young people, with a risk that you have noted that it might result in disillusionment on the ground and alienation, feelings of alienation, and yet you do not partner with private sector. What are you aiming to gain? Because we've got an understanding that as government there is a government private sector kind of partnership that needs to take place between government. And then similarly with the not awarding incentives, grants and investments schemes to support PPE empowerment. And the department in its own report, it says no, because it does not do such things. Now I want to understand, what are you aiming to achieve with all those things? And where are you taking the people of the Western Cape to? Thanks very much.
That all on season. Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question, and it's to the department on page 145. But firstly, congratulations, Minister, and your department for achieving clean audits the past, how many years? 10 years, I believe. It is absolutely remarkable and attest to the commitment and hard work of your staff and the systems you have in place. Chairperson, the question I'm asking it relates to emerging risks, and on page 145, and it is the second last bullet point under key risks considered and addressed during the year. And that relates to the inability to implement legal mandate with regard to the provision of public library services. It highlights the difficulty that should VAT be paid on the transfer payments to municipalities. That was also highlighted by the internal the audit committee as an inability or uncertainty with municipalities regarding the charging of the 15% VAT for library funding and its impact on budgetary resources. So can we be provided with an update in terms of how it is going to affect the transfer payments to municipalities if it is to be implemented, and is it going to result into reduced funding to municipalities? Secondly, if it's not going to impact on the amount it will have then serious liquidity problems for the department if that payment is excluded from the transfer payments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is that all on C's? Okay. Mr. HOD? Oh,
Chair, my hand has been up.
sorry, online, Honorable Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I want to extend the question raised by the Honorable Member Clego on page 145, the second last paragraph that says the department is unable to provide sufficient and appropriate support to targeted youth in respect of youth development in the Western Cape Province. This is precisely what I have been raising earlier today, Chair. The curative and effective of the provincial government to fail to support youth is young people joining drugs, gangs, and etc. We would like to know, Chair, what are the reasons for not being able to support youth, and what is being done to address the challenge, Chair? That's my first one. My second one, on the same page 145, the key risk considered and addressed during the year: inadequate space to archive all records received from government institutions. I also raised it earlier, Chair. But this time I'm coming and asking, every year the millions of this program are shifted to other programs or surrendered to revenue fund. Why are those not used towards addressing the physical space challenges? That's the second question, Chair. My last question will be on page 148 to 149, the last paragraph. The remaining offices in the West Coast, Cape Winelands, Overberg, and metro areas will be inspected in the next financial year. What I want to know, Chair, is why this not conducted and concluded in the same financial year? Does this have to do with staff shortages, Chair? That's all I wanted to ask for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Barnes.
Thank you very much, Chair. The Member Barnes' last question, I might request for her to repeat it. I didn't get it, but in the meantime, we'll just proceed with answering the existing questions. The CFO will take some of these questions, and then Ms. Jackie Ball will take the ones about the youth. I just want to quickly do the archives one. So the inadequate space in the archives, as much as it is a risk raised by DCAS, rightfully so, because we are responsible for the archives. Responsibility for infrastructure is with Department of Public Works. So DCAS cannot raise funding for its own infrastructure. All of that goes through the UAMPS process through the Department of Public Works, and we have done that every year, and we were successful. We were going to be having that building construction starting in April 2020. It was an approved project, and then in the medium-term budget statement from national as well as province in 2019, if we could all recall, alarm bells were sent. This was before COVID-19. Both ministers of finance, provincial and national, indicated that there needed to be significant budget cuts. And this was before COVID-19, which would come into effect in December, January 2020. So we had already gone into a period of budget cuts, and in December, we received a letter from Department of Public Works saying our project has been deferred. So it has not been stopped, it has been deferred, and it is a project that we still believe will see the light of day. The risk itself has now been elevated to a provincial risk, so it's no longer a DCAS risk, it now sits on the provincial risk register, and that will help expedite that. I'd like to hand over to CFO to take the other questions, and then Jackie to close off with the.
Thank you, HOD. So let me start off with the youth risk, and perhaps just to explain, on page 145, so what we are indicating here is an emerging risk. So it doesn't mean that it is in fact happening at the moment. And this emanated from the fact that this risk was raised globally. And therefore, we felt that there could be a potential impact on our department. And when you start to identify risk, you obviously need to have ways as to how to mitigate it. So the way we are mitigating it is we do have a budget. So I'll ask Jackie perhaps just to speak about the way she is managing that particular budget. We've also received additional funding, an additional 15 million for youth within the after school space. So I'm just going to ask Jackie to just elaborate in terms of how she is dealing with that part of the youth issue. Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks very much, CFO, and thanks members for the question. And I think as CFO has indicated, it is an emerging global risk. It's also an emerging South African risk, which has been raised at, with the presidency and the kind of your whole youth stimulus package. And I think we flag it here. I think that in terms of how we're dealing with it, I think there are three things that we've done. The first is this process of setting up the Transversal Youth Forum and getting the entire whole of government to approach it in a systematic way, because I think one of the challenges has been that there are multiple little programs, but we don't always feel the impact of those programs. And so the idea is to get a much more coordinated response. Linked to that is the development of the norms and standards. So we ensure that every program has a clear theory of change and is very clear which provincial indicators it's contributing to, so that we are doing programs that are impactful and where we can see a shift in some of the data. Linking to a much more evidence-based approach. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think we've recognized that this is a challenge not just for government. It's got to be a whole of society approach in order to address it. And it's also got to be a life course approach. So risk starts from, in fact, the moment a child is conceived, there are a number of factors that, the mother not eating properly, if there's any substance abuse, and so it continues for the life of the child. So I think along with the whole of Western Cape government, there is this approach of starting to focus on particular areas, on a life course approach and on a whole of society approach in order to get a much more systematic and ecosystem approach to addressing the challenges of young people. And I think we're already starting to see in some of those areas that there is a reduction in murder and some of the risk indicators that we use to measure. And I think that's really what the thinking is here, is that we need to crowd in and start to see the impacts around that, so we can really say that the next generation is coming out, their risk profile is different. And then I think the third aspect to addressing this internally in the department is we're trying to look at how we begin to ensure that much of what the department does, which HOD is referred to on the prevention spectrum, that we are putting in place the protective factors, that, as I think Paul was indicating earlier, that also takes a life course approach and a holistic approach. So we providing services from ECD all the way through a young person's school life, and then also for 18 to 25-year-olds. So it's also about having internally in the department a life course approach. Thanks.
One, the question around the reason why we're not partnering with private sector. So again, this particular section speaks to the BBBE. So really just for departments to demonstrate how well they applied the principles. So within the supply chain space, we do not partner with private sector. We do partner, however, with NGOs on many of our programs. So just in terms of partnerships, we are fully aware of the benefits of it. We are partnering with NGOs, but not with private sector, because it becomes more complex to, in fact, enter into a partnership with one service provider, because you will have, or one private company, because you will have to demonstrate how did you actually get to it. So within the supply chain area, there's the 5 pillars that you have to adhere to. So it becomes a little bit complicated to just approach private sector. Thank you.
There's one question that Mr. Julie is going to take on page 148. Sure.
Thank you, HOD. Good afternoon, committee. The question on the audits that were not completed within the financial year, really not due to capacity, but really because of the lockdown level still being in place for a big part of the financial year, could only start late with the audits, and we did finalize it in the early part of this financial year, Chair.
We had the VAT issue, Chairperson. I'd like to ask Celia to cover and then CFO to cover the VAT issue.
Okay, no, thank you very much. Good afternoon to all. Yes, so the Provincial Treasury has contacted National Treasury with two options. The one is that the tax legislation be amended to allow transfers from provinces to municipalities for services rendered to not be deemed a supply of service, or alternatively for National Treasury to rule in terms of Section 72 so that the VAT will not be applicable to the transfers. They're still waiting on a response. They're still engaging. We had a municipal seminar where Provincial Treasury was at, and they advised us to just go ahead as per normal, that they believe that there will be a solution to this problem. So at the moment, the municipalities are still putting a 15% contingent liability against their transfers. But from what we've seen now with the spending on the latest reports, they are still spending their conditional grants and their MRFs fully. So yeah, we're waiting. We haven't heard any further information.
Perhaps just to follow on that, so there was also the uncertainty in terms of the accounting treatment of it. So at the seminar, we had the Accountant General, Aziz Hardin, who addressed the delegation and basically guided in terms of how to account for it, because obviously it could, in fact, it becomes a contingent liability, but in the end, that will translate in actual, funding, which is the issue that we are dealing with from a legislation perspective.
Any further questions or follow-up, honorable members? I don't know, we are seeing that, let me just check. Honorable Barnes, was your question well captured in terms of the answers?
It was well captured. Thank you, Chair. I'm covered.
Sure. Honorable members, now let's go to section E of all the reports. And if I might just get an indication of those members who want to ask questions on E. If we start from the outside now, this time, any questions on online while the honorable members in the house are still paging through? Honorable Barnes, also online. Yes.
Chair.
Member Bosman, any question? Okay.
No, Chairperson, I'm covered on
Chair,
my side.
I
Thank
do
you
have...
very much. I'm covered on my side. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Barnes?
Yes, Chair, I do have a question.
Yes.
I was just like the members, they're scrolling to my questions. My first question, Chair, will be on page 230, travel and subsistence under local. Why is the budget for consumables and travel subsistence not used to support struggling learners? Sorry. Struggling learners to participate in national and international compensation. I ask this, Chair, because of many complaints of learners who have missed out on big opportunities because they could not have enough funds for traveling and sporting gear and equipment, etc. Those are matters that one faces every day, hence the question. My second question, Chair, will be on page 230, payments for financial assets, other material losses written off. What are the details of these debts? How did the accident and death happen, and why they were written of, Chair. My last one will be on page 236. Sorry for that. 236, claims against the department. Midnight Storm Investment 170, PTY Ltd versus Minister of Arts and Culture and others, which relates to a court case that was lodged at North Gauteng High Court. Chair, what I want to know is what are the updates regarding the case? Has the matter been finalized? What are the details and engagements between the HWC, the department, and these investors? What are their demands and the department's reply to them? My last one, Chair, will be on page 39. Details of current and prior year irregular expenditure.
Page 39.
Non-compliance with procurement.
Page 239.
239, Chair. Yes, Chair. Page 239. Details of current and prior year irregular expenditure. Non-compliance with procurement prescripts. What are the details of procurement prescripts not complied with, and what are the reasons for it, Chair? And what are the updates on the determination test, Chair? That's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Barnes. Honorable Khakon.
Thanks, Chair. We will go back to the same question we asked the Auditor General and the Audit Committee on page 210. And lucky enough, then they did their little bit of expression, but said you have the fuller details of this whole thing. So on page 210, it is the last, I would say, the table, but it has got a sentence that starts with the under expenditure, which is related to compensation of employees. And now what we want to understand is that in most departments we get this story, similar story, about the lack of departments speeding up of filling of vacant posts. Then we want to understand from your side that what exactly are the serious challenges of you to curb the high rate of unemployment that is out there and fill vacant posts? What could have been the serious one? Because when we ask the AG, then they seem to have understood your explanation, but the explanation should come from you. And then on page 228, regarding the agency and support relating to the outsourced services, there I see the department did not put any amount of money. I'm not sure if maybe my eyes are deceiving me. There is no money that is allocated there. But however, the department gives an explanation underneath, saying that it has done the paid to panel members who adjudicated the applications for arts and culture COVID relief funding. Or is my correlation wrong? But you will correct me if that's a situation, because there on top, on the tabletop, you didn't put anything. There is a dash, but underneath you explain what was done as far as that program is concerned, but you refer to it as the payment of those people. So want to understand if there were outsourced services there, and if there is money attached to that, and why it does not reflect if there is anything. And then on page 231, regarding the staff bed debts caused by overpayments to the tune of 13,000 and was later written off. And then now what we want to understand that what does the department mean when it comes to uneconomical to reclaim that kind of amount? So just an explanation as far as that is concerned, because sometimes we easily write people's debts off whilst they are still on our system and they are responsible for our liabilities. And then on page 236, with regards to contingent liabilities, regarding the summons that were issued against the Department of Education and the Department of Cultural Affairs relating to the personal injury estimated at 2.6 million. So I know maybe the matter might be sub judice. It might have been concluded if we can get an update and clarity as far as that is concerned. That where are we standing as far as that is concerned, and what is the state? Because what we note in most instances is that departments exonerate themselves before even courts do that. They would say they are not part of any litigation against them. So on page 239, I see an irregular expenditure of 492,000. And if we can also just get clarity as far as that is concerned, that what happened there, that seems to be a huge amount of money, and if we can get clarity. Thanks, sir.
Honorable America.
I'm covered, Chair. Thank you.
No questions.
I'm covered.
So you mean Honorable Teko represented you well? And Barnes as well. Okay. No, that's good. Just on my part, the report of the Auditor General is indicated that there is an under expenditure of 1.3, quite a very small percentage. But when you put it in round figures, it's 10 million. And if I get that, yeah, it's 10 million. 10 million is quite a substantial amount of money. I know it can mean a lot in many municipalities. So maybe just some kind of an explanation as to the significant cause of that. Then I think on the same report of the department, there is a claim on page 3 of the Auditor General report, which I believe you don't have really, but then it's emphasis of matter. It's about the department is opposing, the department is the defendant in a land claim lawsuit, and the department is opposing the claim. Ultimate outcome of the matter will not be determined, and so no provisional liability. Maybe just we can just get some clarity on that case. Just what is it and what is it about? Maybe is it not risky, not in case lose that and we haven't budgeted for it. Now, then on page 3 on performance information, I must say it's one of the best performance information I've seen that far, because it really goes to details as to what you do, because in most departments it will just be one line. They'll say performance information, it will be, they'll say program so and so, and that's it. They won't go details the way you detail, which is makes understanding even much easier. Now, but then there is a, I think on 442 school sport, there is something called the number of neighborhoods supported. Is it neighborhood watches that, or is it because I believe that should be community safety that should be dealing with that, you know, or it might be another neighborhood watch. I don't know. There might be some, because I'm more familiar with neighborhood watches on the community safety department. Then the one last general question from my part is regarding the entities, basically all the entities, because I see when you both, I think it's in the audit committee and in the Auditor General's report that, for example, the when it comes to the section that deals with performance information, let me take an example, heritage. The performance information there is not as elaborate or as definitive as in the department. It just says here, heritage, Western Cape. So I think there is just, I think, I would like to have more explanation on that. For example, you go to the language committee and the performance information is just language committee. And somewhere, somehow, it just doesn't make sense to me. But maybe if you explain, it might make better sense. And also, if I look at the amounts you budget for these committees, all these entities, I don't know whether will they be able to do the kind of work that they are expected to do. Let me take one example. I don't think we are under budgeting for them, because language, we are here now all speaking, communicating with each other on foreign language, which is English. Now, obviously, if anyone wants to speak Xhosa or Afrikaans, we've got interpretation. But I believe there should be something done, for example, on languages, so that we can start communicating in our own languages, in our own African languages, start interacting with that. So, but then you've got a situation whereby I think, again, I'm generalizing for all these entities, because, for example, on languages, I think the amount that is being budgeted for is about 240 something, but this amount of monies that we are budgeting for them, is it really sufficient to address these challenges? Heritage and cultural activities, I think what is maybe even key on heritage, even on cultural activities, there is now this new trend of First People. And in the Western Cape, we are the only province that don't recognize traditional leaders, that don't have seats for traditional leaders in our, maybe the minister can explain. But then with the kind of budget, are we able to achieve these responsibilities that is assigned to these entities? That's just my general question for entities. Really. So I think I'm finished with questions on my side. HOD.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the CFO will cover most, except for, like Paul, to cover the matter around neighborhood schools, just explaining the concept. I'd like Michael to cover Midnight Storm. It emerged twice, Michael. It's also under the emphasis of matter. I'd like Sean to just cover some of the circumstances around the COE. And I'd like Lyndon to cover the update of the litigation that is mentioned on 236 about education. And that is it, yes. And then CFO will cover the rest. Just for me, Chair, to cover the ones that you asked now about the entities and the funding that we give them. So the DCAS entities, unlike the entities in the other departments, such as, how Cape Nature is structured or Westgrow, etc., the DCAS entities are not at arm's length. So most of the costs are driven by the work of the committees, the committee or HWC's council, as well as the committees within HWC and the work that they do. The rest of the work is covered within DCAS, because the staff for the entities are DCAS staff, which are seconded to do work for the entity. So the staffing budget is coming from DCAS, and all those incidentals, the consumables and everything is done with DCAS. We also are able to do a lot of collaboration on the language side, because we have a very fully fledged language department, which works with the language committee. and covers most of the work that the language committee would want to do. So they do that in collaboration. We could definitely be funding the language committee more, and we are going to be doing that given that the scope of the language committee is beginning to grow. As Chair will be aware that the South African Sign Language is about to become the 12th official language. The language committee is going to have to guide the minister on how to approach this and what does it mean for the Western Cape government. On the side of the recognition of traditional leaders, so the reason for that, for the lack of recognition, official recognition, is the outcomes of the Nhlapo Commission. At the moment, there is the new commission on Khoisan matters, which will probably come with a different outcome after the recognition period expires. The period opened at the end of March and will be open for 2 years for Khoi and San communities to submit their applications for recognition. And once that happens, the recognition and the work to support the Khoisan leaders that will be recognized will fall under the auspices of Department of Local Government, which will then make it the same like all the other government departments around the country. So we will have our own COCTA, provincial COCTA, so that we can cover all our traditional affairs or Khoisan related matters. And the Department of Local Government is aware of that. They've been driving the work around the operationalization of the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act, and they've already tabled a report in Cabinet, just giving Cabinet an update on the work they've done and some of the costing that they are doing on the Act itself. So I'd like to hand over to the CFO to take her questions, and then the remainder will be as I had requested. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, HOD. So I'm going to start off with the losses written off, and maybe just to speak to the process first, that the process that we follow. So in this case, it would be an official that had an accident with a car. We then go through an investigation. We also work with the state attorney. The state attorney will normally advise us whether the official lost his or her cover. So let's assume the official lost his or her cover. We hold that person accountable to reimburse the department the cost of what we have to pay. If not, then we follow the write-off process. And the state attorney would normally also advise, for example, just in general, when we pursue debts, whether it is economical to pursue those debts. And in those cases, they would most often request us to write off, which is the case with, which brings me to the next one, which is the issue of the staff debts. So the staff debts, we had about, the ones that we wrote off, we had about 12 cases. And in this case, we worked with the state attorney who then advised that it is uneconomical to pursue the debts further, because oftentimes they cannot, so it would be employees that has left the service, and we try, and for some reason they incur debt, and we've got the debt recorded and we have to pursue that. So we work with the state attorney, and then they would then advise whether we can write it off. And in most cases, they advise us to write off. Like it would be like, in this case, it ranges from 186 Rand to 3,900 as an example. And I've got the list here in front of me. So that covers the losses and the staff debt. Irregular expenditure, that consists of 2 cases. The one is 480,000 and the other one was 11,800. Both of those cases has been subjected to the determination test, and it's all at review stages. So they've gone through the entire process. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer because we have to be absolutely sure of our facts. And there needs to be consultation with the people that transgressed, if I can put it that way. Because when we submit it to PT, who is now the delegated authority, we need to provide them with the facts. So it sometimes takes a little bit longer. But I can assure you it's all in review stages, and it will be signed off within the next week or 2 by the accounting officer, and then submitted to Provincial Treasury to consider the condonement of it. Then there was one on the under expenditure of 10 million, so 10.7 million. That is on page, I just want to point members to the page as well. On page 211. So the bulk of that under expenditure relates to COE, which is about 5.8 million. The balance it relates to the challenges that we had with the delivery of the goods that we ordered in the last quarter, let's say in March. So globally they had, issues with supply chains because of the impact of COVID-19. It just delayed, the distribution of goods. So in our case, we had IT equipment that we purchased with consumables, and we had library books as well. And unfortunately, the service providers could not deliver it on time, but we have requested a rollover. And like I've indicated in the previous session, it is already provisionally approved by Provincial Treasury, and we will get that money back in the next now in the adjusted estimate, so that we can, in fact, we've already paid the service providers. I think. Sorry, which one is that page? Page 228. Oh yeah, so the reason why there is nothing for the current year is because the expenditure that was incurred for the previous year related to the adjudication committee that we appointed to do the relief funding. So we did not have the same process in the current financial year. Therefore, comparatively, it doesn't show any expenditure, but we have to show the previous financial year expenditure. I've covered. There's just one question, and it was Member Bond's first question. I didn't quite get it. It's got to do with the TMS, and it's on page 230. Are you going to answer? Okay.
Subsistence for learners.
Oh, okay. Then again, okay. I think then I've covered all my. Sean is going to do challenges. Last year we've done and expenditure.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. So the first question related from Honourable Member Bonds, travel and subsistence and learners that don't seem to have funding. So what we have done from our side is that we firstly make money available to federations. So there are transfer funding that is made available to them, so that if any of their learners or any of their athletes or youth is chosen for a particular team, they can also make use of that funding. It's transfer funding, and it's about 12 million rand a year that we make available to 140 federations. In the last year, it was 143. Then we also have what is called ad hoc funding for international participation. If any athlete has been chosen to represent South Africa, then they can apply to us via their federation, and we would contribute 10,000 rand towards the expenses of that particular athlete. But that is only premised upon a letter from SASCOC confirming that the athlete has received Protea colours. Then in terms of our conditional grant, we receive 10 million rand for school sport, and that funding can only be used for what they call legitimate school sport championships. So if it's outside of the framework of the 16 priority codes, then we as a department cannot fund that. We have to work within the framework because it's gazetted, and the 10 million rand is then used towards the school sport. So that is where anybody then that wishes to apply needs to go through those particular systems that we have. Actually, with perhaps I can do the MEC question also. So in terms of the summons that was issued, it's a learner here in Cape Town at one of the schools. The learner got injured during a playground incident, and the Department of Education is the first respondent and we are the second respondent. We had indicated to the State Attorney that we do not believe that we are actually involved in the matter because it's a school matter. However, in terms of what we had to do is, because the matter has not concluded, the contingent liability is still with us because we are still cited as one of the parties in that matter.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members. I'll just give an update on the contingent liability for the Midnight Storm Investments matter. It also came up earlier, so I'll just give a very brief context for those who weren't here. Midnight Storm, they brought a case for seeking compensation against the state. for the declaration of a provincial heritage site in the Baboon Point area close to Elands Bay. They claimed that the declaration of a provincial heritage site sterilized their rights to develop the site. The reason for the 8.2 million contingent liability is that's the value of the entire site or entire property, although they only wanted to obviously develop a certain portion of it. The matter went to court and the court found in favor of HWC. They found that the Provincial Heritage Site declaration was legal and it was not absolute, but is subject to public interest rights. Subsequently, Midnight Storm, they took leave of appeal, and the matter therefore was pending. However, they reapproached HWC with a proposal to develop a different part of the site on the fringe of the provincial heritage site area. This was considered by the Impact Assessment Committee of HWC, which initially expressed an in-principle support for this, but subsequently just requested that the applicant then submit a NID, which is a Notice of Intent to Develop, and also a Heritage Impact Assessment. If all of that goes well, the case will be closed and the contingent liability will then fall away. Thank you.
With regards to the question around number of neighborhoods supported, so the one before that speaks to number of districts supported. So in each district, there are various neighborhoods. Another word would be areas. So the schools in that neighborhood can be supported with regards to school sport activities.
Is it neighborhood watches?
No,
Like for security reasons?
It's the neighborhood. Like Pokmakiri would be a neighborhood. Hazendal would be a neighborhood. Severn Park would be a neighborhood.
Like vicinities.
So the vicinity is an area. Yeah.
Neighborhood watch or... Follow?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to follow up on the irregular expenditure, Chair. The irregular expenditure, it's 492 million rand. It was stated that it's about two matters involved in that. I understand there might be a degree of confidentiality, but I also understand that the stage where the resolution of this irregular expenditure is in stage 3 in terms of the report, and perhaps may have developed further since then. But we don't know any detail about 480 million rand. It's a lot of money. You know. Come again?
It's thousands. It's thousands.
482,000, yes.
No, okay. No, it's immaterial, my question. Thanks. Withdraw.
Okay. Further follow-ups online? Are there any follow-ups, questions? Follow-ups, question or new questions on E? There's nothing.
More budget. I don't have any follow-up question. That's why I misinterpreted the figures.
Honorable Kab.
Yeah, no, mine, Chair, would be on the tricky question that you've asked, and I could see the department trying by all means to sidestep it. But we are not aiming to create a conflict between them and Treasury and as well as Premier about issues of budget. I think it was asked because what we want to understand is to get a feeling if what is being allocated is fair enough to be able to deliver what is expected out of it. So And then if we somersault like that, we don't go to the exact answer. Because if you check, you would allocate to different entities what you have. And then it happens that you would hamstring yourself and say, you don't do enough, especially on youth development. You must check, Western Cape is one of the key areas that are noted for crime, gangsterism, drugs, and all these things. And then if you would go and check with the Department of Health, it is equally frustrated with the number of young people that are in their institutions on the basis of, because of socio-economic challenges such as drugs and everything else. So the expectation from your side is very much high that, are you being given enough funding for what is expected out of you? If it's not, then what is it that could be done? Because we can't hammer you with the little bit of resources that we are having. If we check, we were scrutinizing your thing, your report now on how you ensure that each and every library has got access to Wi-Fi, and of which you could do based on what you have. And then at the end of the day, we'd critique you for not delivering. And yet we're not giving enough. So what we wanted to understand, and I didn't hear the answer clearly, it is not to put you on the spotlight or near the corner, by the way, is that, is the budget enough? That is allocated to you. And if it is not, what could be done? Running 4 entities, receiving this kind of report, but now there is this thing that Honorable America tried to put you on the spotlight about the issue of performance assessment versus the financials. So before we put you to that, could we understand the issue of your financials if they are at least are able to take this province forward? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Member Clerk. No, I'll give you a simple answer. No. The money we have is way too little. Because for us, you see, if you want to measure if as a society we are doing well or not doing well, let me put it that way, you will see how much we spend on the emergency centers in hospital. So we've got a choice to make. Do we rather continue spending on the emergency center in the hospital? Or do we close our eyes and put our money in the thing that will prevent our emergency centers looking the way they look on Fridays and Saturday nights? And the answer is very clear. You've got to put money into an outfit like DCAS that will serve to prevent the youth from being exposed to some of the things that they're exposed to. And take a hiding somewhere else. I mean, but I need to be respectful to the government's processes and not be accused of using this very important accounting process as a process to make a case for more money outside of the official processes. That is why I responded the way I responded in the morning. But you've now asked me direct, and yeah, I'll give you a direct answer that says no, it's not enough.
Agbare Minister, enige commentaar van your kant as we are about to close? At least
Chairperson, nothing from my side, just to thank everyone for this process in this afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, then I think let me then make use of the opportunity to thank you, Minister, in your department, and equally thank the Auditor General and the Audit Committee, because I haven't seen any member of the public really that would like to ask questions. So in the absence of that, let me make use of this opportunity. Thank you, always being available to come and play your role and responsibility of being accountable in terms of the work that you have been given as the department as well. And also equally thank the Auditor General and the Audit Committee for being good and reliable partners in this accountability ecosystem. As I always say to departments, that when we ask questions, we are not asking questions to catch you up or trying to put you on the spot, but we are also trying to assist in making sure that the department deliver on its mandate and its roles and responsibilities. Thank you very much. You excuse as we are going to continue as the committee with some of our work. Thank you very much, AG. Thank you very much, Audit Committee. No, but we've got the message at least. Yeah, we've got.
Baie dankie minister. Alles van die beste, né?
Next time, HOD, we are going to communicate with you in Nama. Yes. No, look like the indigenous people are coming very strong for recognition. You look everywhere, they want their recognition.
Yeah. The traditional leaders.
Yeah.
All the best, minister.
We don't need to. It's a small department.
Yeah. No resolutions. When they make a little or.
Eh?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is there the back?
Eh?
Is there the back? Yeah.
Should they go?
Yeah.
Tell them they can go.
Yeah, see my video.
We'll get them there.
Yeah.
It won't be long here. No, we'll take it to the homeless people. Take it. I don't know, honorable members, are there any suggestions for resolution on this matter, except the issue of the youth? I don't know how we can deal with the issue of the youth, because the only other department I see we can really actively accommodate the youth is on sports. If you look at some of the areas and some in major countries where they are very successful in sport, it started school. Then, but we find that in majority of schools don't even have sport as a curriculum. Sports, especially in poor areas, is a by the way thing. I don't know how we can address that. But anyway, honorable members, are there any suggestions?
A possible resolution, Chair, is that if they could provide us with a list of sports federations and the appropriations that they have made to each of those sport federations. And then also the same would be for non-profit institutions, youth and after school programs. Which are those non-profit institutions and what's the appropriation or allocation for that? And also list of all the donations and gifts that they have
very spot on. I think it captures actually because what we want to achieve, because they'll come with a report. Then when they come with the report, we'll be able to interrogate them.
Okay.
So the honourable member said that gifts and donations is what department gave or what they.
What they gave.
Honourable Kago.
Hey, No, I think I'm covered by Honorable America, but I just wanted to know there was a mention of a World Cup.
Okay.
A netball World Cup next year.
Yeah, it's next year.
Yeah, it's next year, and I know but I don't serve in that committee. Their state of readiness in terms of.
Is it not a risk? Is it not a risk?
Yeah, no, that's what I wanted to check, because now, if they did, then we can just leave it. But if they didn't, we can maybe through that committee raise such a thing. You check their state of readiness, and as well because especially when it comes to the issue of crime, the crime statistics always put us on the highest of the list, and then we are hosts, and it's young people that are involved in all these kind of things. And then there will be fan parks, and I don't say we need to create something, a fear that is not there. So, but at the same time, that how will be the collaboration of things.
Thank you. Is Honorable Bosman online? Online subscribe.
Chair, I just wanted to add to Member Kleho's point, and also just to bring to the committee's attention that the Standing Committee of Cultural Affairs and Sports has taken a resolution to invite the local organizing committee for the Netball 2023 World Cup to come and brief the committee on its state of readiness, because they are the implementing agents for the World Cup. And the department will also come and brief us on their state of readiness around the legacy work that it is doing in making sure that each district municipality has netball courts that are upgraded. So if Member Trejo is interested in coming to learn more about netball, we welcome him at our committee. Member Barnes and I will be very happy to teach him the rules of netball, Chair. Thank you.
Honorable Barnes. Then, honorable members, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for your participation and for your attendance. The meeting is adjourned. Let's make sure we don't conduct fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
Yes.
And make sure that we indulge